In the name of the Father, Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Good morning, Anthony, and Elizabeth, and Judith, Anton, Father Christopher, your prayers. God bless you all. I like the way you're Happy Tuesday. That's nice. Yes. It's good to remember, actually, to keep ordinary things in mind as well as extraordinary things. It's wonderful to be looking forward to the Feast of Annunciation on the 25th. But it's also good to remember that we're alive and kicking and doing well today. And simply to make today special. Each day is a special day, a special individual gift of God. When we rise in the morning, a sign of our resurrection, and retire to bed at night time, a sign of our death, to arise to the resurrection next morning, and so on. Good morning, Gary and George and Vicky. God bless you all. Right, today we're changing chapter. We're now in, good morning, Despina. We're now in chapter 12, and we're going to be looking at verses 1 to 11. At this point, we are facing, well, we've already begun to look towards the crucifixion in chapter 11. And at the end of chapter 11, where it says in verse 53 that the authorities then looked for a way to kill him. They planned to kill him. We have the first, as it were, bell toll of the crucifixion. And today, in this one, we'll have another one at the end of the reading in verse 11, where they plan not only to kill the Lord, but also to kill Judas, not Judas, to kill Lazarus as well. Then in the middle of it, we have Mary coming to anoint the Lord, and he says, "This is for my burial." We're already told about his death, and now we're being softened up, as it were, for his burial. So we have that as a really important theme running through chapters 11 and 12. And really, from now onwards, we begin to look forward all the way through to the crucifixion. It's very interesting. Later on in this chapter, the Lord will be talking about dying to this world and following him as being a sort of death. And the person who is trotted out by the evangelist for that is Lazarus. And we have Lazarus here as well. Okay? So Lazarus is not only a sign of life and resurrection, but he is also a sign and a foretaste of the Lord's death. Lazarus comes to life because the Lord dies, or will die, and we will come to life because the Lord died and rose again. Morning, Vera and Ian, God bless you, and Tatiana, Natalia, Kalimera, Sas, Christos. I hope you're well as well. Right, let's crack on then with chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. Then, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil, of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, "Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not have always." Now a great many of the Jews knew that he was there, and they came, not for Jesus' sake only, but they might also see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests plotted to put Lazarus to death also, because on account of him, many of the Jews went away and believed in Jesus. Okay, so the plot thickens, as it were. They get worse. So Jesus has left Ephraim, which is 12 to 13 miles away to the northwest. Actually, I can't find it on the map. I can't find its modern name either, although there doesn't seem to be any town with that name. Not Ephraim, but Etaiba, I think it's called, in that direction. And he skirts around Jerusalem. So if you imagine Jerusalem being here, and from your point of view, he's going around this way, about a quarter of the way around Jerusalem, and then into Bethany, which is a couple of miles away from Jerusalem. He skirts around Jerusalem to Bethany. It's probably Saturday. We don't know that it is. According to tradition, of course, it is. 6 days before the Passover, so we can pretty well say we're talking about March the 28th, AD 33. Or somewhere around about then. Okay? The context, the real context, is Lazarus. Lazarus and Bethany. As it says in the hymn that we sing on Lazarus Saturday, rejoice at Bethany. Bethany is rejoicing. Jesus has risked his life to bring Lazarus life. And in chapter 11, verse 53, Jesus has been designated for death by the authorities. Lazarus is going to feature again, as I said earlier on, in this chapter in verses 17 and 18, as a sign pointing towards the divinity of Christ. Okay? So really important. And all of it gives you the reason why it was that Jesus is welcomed into Jerusalem by the common people, not, of course, by the authorities who are outraged by him. We see their outrage at the end of this. So it's probably the Sabbath evening, Saturday evening, March the 28th, AD 33, something like that. Martha is serving. It's interesting that she is serving. She again is doing what she does best, and that is practical stuff. Whether or not she's actually bringing food to the table is another question, but she is certainly organizing the people who are serving, has done the cooking and the preparation and everything else, and that's where her mind is, making sure that everybody is hospitably treated. We like Martha. We also like Mary. Lazarus is doing something really quite amazing. He who is expected to be dead and should be dead and rotting, he is sitting with the Lord and he is eating with him. And this by itself, of course, is a remarkable thing. There's no phantom in Lazarus. He is able to eat and drink and feast along with the Lord. And almost certainly this great supper has been put on as a thanksgiving to the Lord and to his disciples for this miracle, this great thing that has happened. Okay, whereabouts are they? Well, we don't really know. According to the other Gospels, it's quite possible this is taking place in Simon the leper's house, who, as far as we're aware, is a rich man and probably therefore has the space to accommodate all of these people coming for a great dinner. No expense spared, none at all. So there we are at the end of verse 2. Verse 3, the highlight of the evening, the thing that people remembered from then onwards, right the way through, down through the generations until our day. Something that is always told of Mary that makes this particular supper something unbelievably memorable. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Okay, so here we have a gift given out of straightforward love. It's called also pistic nard, pistic oil. Pistis means faithful in Greek, So faithful nard, it means pure nard, but also faithful. And this oil, this perfume, is being given to the Lord and poured out upon his feet as an act of faith and purity of heart. And it's happening in front of everybody, a huge declaration of love and faith and thanksgiving to the Lord. Incredibly expensive, this stuff. A pound of it. We'll come back onto the price in a moment. About half a litre, so about a pint of the stuff. So a lot of oil to be poured out onto the Lord's feet. Pure nard. This pistic nard came from India. So it had a long journey already and would have been a rare commodity, something that wealthy people had. And it may well be that Lazarus and the two sisters of Bethany are wealthy people. We don't know. The fact that they had this knocking around in the place does rather suggest that at one point, even if not now, they had money to spare. Some people say perhaps this was an heirloom handed down through the generations to some really special occasion. And now that special occasion has come. This particular oil, made in a far-off country, is going to have the head snipped off the alabaster top. It cannot be used again. It cannot be now stored. It's going to be poured out in one huge act of love, huge act of generosity, wasteful, blissfully wasteful generosity. Okay, and Mary does this. She doesn't, according to the other gospel, she pours it on the Lord's head as well. But she kneels down by his feet as an act of humility and pours it out as an act of generosity and faith and love and worship onto his feet, the lowest part of his body. And then she bows herself right the way down to the ground, uncovers her hair, which is an astonishing thing for her to do by itself. You only uncovered your hair, if you're a woman, before close family members and your parents and your husband. Otherwise, you kept your hair covered. It is a sign of your modesty, and also your hair is a sign of the glory of womanhood. And she wipes his feet with her hair. And just think about that as a thing. She'd taken the best towel in the area and wiped his feet, massaged them, looked after them with the best towel in the house. Would have thought that was a great thing to do. But she doesn't do that. She kneels right the way down, puts her head on his feet, and cleans off his feet with her hair. A wonderful thing. Then the final thing it says about that, the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. There was a rabbinic saying at the time that said something along the lines of oil, perfume poured out in the bedroom. The perfume seeps through into the dining room. And here we have the idea, the house itself, the whole house, was filled with the fragrance of the oil. And not only the house, but of course, eventually, the entire world will be filled with the fragrance of that gift. A wonderful thing, even down to today. We read this and we think of Mary in terms of her pouring out this gift to the Lord. And not only, of course, the world, but her fragrance, her incense, as it were, that perfume rises up to heaven and fills heaven also with that oil. And the Lord will give us a hint in a moment that that fragrance will also go down into hell and purify hell too. Okay, so this is an amazing act that Mary does immediately before this great and holy week. We might also think that there are different economies going on here as well. This huge gift, it would have been very expensive. For some people, this would have been a mere nothing. I'm old enough to remember when people would spend a week's wages for a poor person on one cigar and tip somebody a quarter of the price of a cigar and think nothing of it, and not can be concerned at all with the table servant who had brought the cigar to their table. So there we have the whole house filled with this worship of God. And the Lord accepts this completely, as we'll see in a minute. We see within this the Lord not saying, "Don't do that, Mary. Rise yourself up." He accepts it completely as his due, as God. It is an ordinary, wonderful thing for him. And he accepts her act of love with humility too. Sometimes it is a good thing. It is difficult to receive somebody's love. It is difficult to receive somebody else's act of giving. Sometimes we have to accept it in a spirit of humility. We accept the love and the way that they give it to us. Then, how this is contrasted with the next person who enters left. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, "Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. So Jesus is pinpointed. Judas is pinpointed. That one. You. This one did it. Judas, Bar Simon of Iscariot, a disciple, the betrayer, the treasurer of the movement, the thief. And what does he say? Well, he says, according to the other gospel writers, he says what is in the mind of the other disciples. And John then puts it into his mouth. Whether or not he himself actually said it, or whether it was said by the disciples generally, we don't know. But John says Judas said this. He's the one that put into words what is in the minds of the other people. Okay? Why didn't you sell this and give the money to the poor? It is a deliberate contrast between Mary's free will offering to the Lord, her act of tremendous, huge, generous love towards the Lord, and to Judas's self-devotion. Okay, so you have Mary's self-giving, her love and devotion, and you have Judas's self-love and his devotion to himself, which will end in his betrayal of the Lord. You have the true and the false disciples. Mary, the true one, Judas, the betrayer. 300 denarii, which reminds me of my old school chaplain, Mr. White, the Reverend Mr. White, who, if anybody ever had a name that ended in a double I, and there was a friend of mine, an Iranian called Murad Sami, and because his name ended in two I's, he always called him Sami I, rhymed with denarii. 300 denarii, that was a year's pay, 300 days' pay. So if you knock off all the Sabbaths, so that's 52 Sabbaths, and you then knock off all the other days, they couldn't work because they were religious Sabbaths, feast days, that was a year's pay. A whole year's pay for a laborer has been poured out over the Lord's feet. It is a tremendous act of love. And Judas would have liked some of that money for himself. He's been nicking the money out of the treasury, out of the money box that they have, and spending it upon himself. Some of the church fathers say the Lord gave him that deliberately He gave the money, he gave the trust, he entrusted it to the one person he knew would steal it, because he knew that he was entrusting himself to the one person who could not be trusted, who would actually betray him. Betrayal is a horrible thing. When you make your home open to somebody and they betray you by stealing from you, taking from you, by betraying your confidences, by doing that sort of thing, it's a horrific thing to happen to anybody. When people go out for an evening, they come back and they discover they've been burgled. There's a horrible feeling of even being betrayed by the house itself. The locks in the house were not secure. The place itself did not keep you safe. Okay? And that is a terrible thing. So shocking in itself. Well, this 300 denarii has attracted the greedy mind of Judas. He'd like some of it for himself. And the Lord then says to the others, particularly to Judas, leave her alone. Let her alone. Let her be. She has kept this for the day of my burial. Now, the word there, kept, is quite interesting. It's terese. I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that properly, but terese. And it means to observe or to hold or to withhold, hang on to something. People are said to observe the Sabbath, the same word. Observe the law, same word. Hold on to the law, withhold the law, take hold of the law. And now she is being, if the Lord is saying, she is observing this, she is holding it for my burial. In other words, she's actually anointing my body in my burial. Okay? It's quite a subtle thing that John is saying there. But we're used by now to John having a play on words and saying to you, I'm going to give you this word so you can hold on to it and realize what it is she's doing. She is observing the Lord's burial here. Something important. The Lord then says something that also shocks the people. Okay? He turns around the normal wording of what you might say about here. He would often say, much what it says here actually, you always have with you the poor, but you're not always going to have me. And in some translations, that's the way it actually puts it. And this one is a bit better, because they have put the poor and me first. And that emphasizes things in the Greek. The poor you have with you always. Me, you do not always have. Okay, so quite a shocker there. Thank you, Christos, for putting that in. Me, you do not always have. Okay, it's really emphatic. And that must have been rather strange for everybody, saying, what's he talking about? Young, healthy man like this? Of course we're going to have him. What's he talking about? She's anointing my body for death, in death, for burial. I'm as good as dead. Now what she is doing is burying me. What does this mean? What do I mean, the poor you're going to have with you forever, but actually me you're not going to have? And they don't know. They don't understand. It doesn't make sense to them at all. Not one tiny bit of it makes sense. They're left completely confused. And the next day, they're going to find it even more bizarre. It doesn't look at all as if the Lord is going to be dead within the week. It looks as if he's going to be having a glittering future. But not now. It doesn't make sense. And everything the Lord has said so far is guaranteed to spoil this party. Okay? Judas has brought it on, but this party is going to be spoiled by this. In the middle of this rejoicing of the resurrection of Lazarus, the Lord is talking about his own death, his own imminent death. And it must have been shocking and quite spoiled the pudding. Let's hope it wasn't trifle. Then, in 9, we begin to see the cracks appearing and the darkness begins to come in a big way. It's beginning to look rather terrible. Okay? Now, a great many of the Jews knew that he was there, and they came, not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might also see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. The people had been flocking out of Jerusalem. It's an oklos again. And the oklos comes running out of Jerusalem, not very far away, 3 miles away. They can make that in less than an hour if they walk quickly, a bit uphill, never mind. It's not all that hot. It's only March. The weather is quite decent. It's great for a day out. Let's go and have a look at this teacher. And while we're at it, let's go and look at Lazarus. He's become a celebrity. Lazarus himself, people are taking notice of. The man who was dead and is now alive. People are amazed by this. It's rather like the way that people will switch on the telly in order to watch some really important bit of news. Everybody in the entire city is talking about this extraordinary thing. I remember how it was when the Berlin Wall came down, and everybody was absolutely glued to their TVs. I remember very well indeed sitting on a rug in front of the television in my parents' home, watching this, absolutely astounded by what had happened. And there was that sort of feeling. Astonishment. We must go and see for ourselves. Let's go. He's just here, 3 miles away? Well, grab up your sandwiches, kids, and off we go. Okay, so they flocked out of Jerusalem to go and see this amazing sight of Lazarus and Jesus, possibly in that order. You know the way it is. People like to see the miracle, not the miracle maker. So Lazarus is now a celebrity. But the chief priests plotted to put Lazarus to death also. They not only want to kill the Lord, but they want to bump off any evidence as well. Because on account of him, many of the Jews went away and believed in Jesus. Epigon. In leaving, going away. The people are going away from what? Well, actually, the word has got a feeling like deserting. So you can reread it, because on account of him, many of the Jews were deserting them and believing in Jesus. Okay? They were leaving, departing, rejecting them. They'd had enough of these chief priests and these Pharisees. They had seen the real thing. They had drunk enough of Ersatz local supermarket cola. What they wanted was the real thing. They wanted the Coca-Cola, preferably the original recipe, new and improved, which always amuses me. Original recipe, new and improved. You often see that in bottles. How can that be? Anyway, with the Lord, they had seen the real thing, and now that's what it is that they wanted. They were no longer interested in this ersatz religion that they saw in the Pharisees, full of hypocrisy, and the Sadducees, who loved the power and the money that came with it. They had seen the real thing over here, and he's over in Bethany, and they want to go and see him, see what they can learn from there. And that'll be enough for today. Right, let's see what people are saying. Tony is having a lovely day in Ireland. Well, that's very good. Maybe you'll go for a walk, Tony. Not so much a nice day here. It's a bit cold and miserable, actually. Palm Sunday, yes, a great feast, a beautiful feast. I like the way also in southern places like in Lebanon, and probably in Greece as well, they fold the palms into little things, the pockets, and put flowers in all the pockets going up. So you see this lovely thing full of flowers, which they can wave and carry around. Here in this country, they make palm crosses, and we've got some here. We'll add whatever it's called, Pussy Willow too. And I'm not sure if we can get Pussy Willow this year. There's nobody been out to pick it, of course. Oh well, never mind. And put flowers with them as well. And wave those around. It's a bit of a strange thing actually, Palm Sunday. We'll come on to this tomorrow, inshallah. I'm going to the monastery tomorrow, so God willing, I shall be there in time. I will be there in time. I'll do my best to be there in time in order to attend at 10 tomorrow. And we'll talk about the palms themselves. Beautiful God-given day. Yes, as Anton said, happy Tuesday, Tony. Morning, Hunter. Anton says, amazing how quickly the attention jumps on Lazarus' resurrection to money. Well, Judas's attention and probably, well, the other disciples, they also were taken by the huge amount of money being thrown away here. Yes, it is shocking. And Judas, he liked money. And of course, we know that he goes after the reward that the Pharisees and the priests had been offering as well. Serves the Lord for the price of a field. Morning, Beverly. We'll catch up. God bless you. Good morning, Christine. Why is it that it is less awkward to receive from a child than from an adult? God's currency, a love we spend on Him and one another. Yeah, love. Love is painful, of course. And when we love somebody, we can expect that to result in our own pain. A mother or father has a child. They live through a lifetime of pain. Whenever they see anything going wrong for that child, it goes right to the very center of their being. And when the child sees the mother or father die, they are crushed with grief if that parent has been anything like a good one, and because of the love that they have received from that mother or father. It goes right to the very, very center of their being. It's why it is that when a marriage breaks up, there's always so much anger and recrimination and things like that, because actually the love and the pain that is caused by something like that disintegrating is then comes out as anger. And often the greater the love, the more the anger. And the more the recrimination and the more they squabble over stupid things, over a bottle opener. I just not. I have seen this. Okay. Maria Helena, you're 20 minutes behind. Woohoo. Thank God, yes, I am well. I don't know whether or not Lazarus' sisters went to Cyprus as well. I have no idea. It'd be interesting to know. Christos may be the person asked about that. Supposing Judas is not a thief, still his statement is so indicative of strange hypocrisy that sounds so real and fair and familiar to their own way of thinking and judging. Yes, indeed. But we know that he is a thief. John is not going to exaggerate or lie over something like that. Not going to accuse him of something he didn't do. Yes, it is. It is a strange hypocrisy. But you find it a lot within churches, where people criticize each other for having done something for God that is beautiful in itself. And sometimes you might think, okay, well, maybe this wasn't exactly the right thing to do. For instance, over the years, so the last, whatever it is, 20, 25, 26 years, I can't remember, people have given me a great stack of vestments, which are beautiful. They're lovely things. And I might be tempted to think, why did they spend so much money on that? They could have spent it on the poor. But that is that person's jar of oil offered not to me, but to God. Or somebody might buy some beautiful gandili, which they have done, and hang before the icons of Christ and the Mother of God. Or, mentioning no names, they might have painted a beautiful icon. And this is their offering towards God. Or they might spend every week working within the church, cleaning and doing flowers and this sort of thing. And this again, this is the oil of nard poured out upon the Lord's feet. It has to be kept, obviously, within reason. St. John Chrysostom even said people are very happy to cough up money for a lamp for the church, but they're more resistant to giving a meal to a beggar. Both of the things obviously are important. The Lord said, you will have the poor with you always. It doesn't mean to say that you ignore the poor. It means that you have every opportunity, every day, without fail, from now until the end of the world, to find me within the poor and give them food and clothing and shelter and all those other things they need, as is said, visit them in prison and so on and so on. All those things that are said in the parable of the sheep and the goats. But acts of love towards Christ are also accepted, and accepted with love. So when somebody brings, maybe pointlessly, a lamp, a beautiful lamp, into church and says, I'd like you to hang this, please, in front of the icon of the Mother of God. And you look at the icon of the Mother of God and say, there are already four lamps hanging before her. Yes, well, let's have another and another and another. And that is a beautiful thing. You look, you go to some Greek churches in Greece or Cyprus, or anywhere really, and you find icons of the Mother of God absolutely smothered with there's silver front, maybe filigree, and lots of little things, thanksgivings in gold or silver or brass or whatever, recording miracles taking place, and lots of gandili in front of them. These are also oil of nard poured out, and people give what they can, and they give generously and thoughtfully, like that icon behind, this one behind me here. It was given to the church by a lovely person who is now dead, and that was an act of simple, pure, straightforward love towards the Mother of God and towards Christ. Okay, I love that icon for that very reason. It used to hang over the door just here, on the other side of the door, when this door led into the church that people used, and everybody walked underneath this little act of love that this lady had given. She was a nice person, and a very fine cook. Morning, Irini. Morning, hello, Tatiana. Can we assume that Lazarus had been to hell then? I read somewhere that he was a very serious person after coming back to life. I don't know, it doesn't say anything there, but I'm sure that he was. If you had died and come back to life. It's like when people say, could you please pray for me, Father? I am very seriously ill and likely to die. We have done that, and we've anointed people with oil. Sometimes, quite often, actually, they get better and don't die. And now they have a problem. Previously, they were ill and they were going to die, and all you need to do then is die well. Receive communion, make your confession, be anointed for death, die, have a funeral, and put your trust in the Lord, and He'll raise you to life on the last day. Nothing to worry about. Crack on with it. But what though when the Lord, having anointed you, gives you life? Then what? When you're expected to die, and everybody thinks you're going to die, but you don't die, you live. Now you have a problem. Now you really do have a problem. What are you going to do with this life that you now have? How are you going to spend it? How are you going to live this life? And Lazarus would certainly have had that problem. Okay, well, the Lord has raised me from the dead, and now I'm alive, and now they're trying to kill me again. I might need to go to Cyprus. What am I going to do when I'm there? What does the Lord want me to do with the life that I now have between now and my second death? Okay, so now you have a problem. So I always sort of stroke my beard thoughtfully when people ask me to anoint them so they don't die. will get better from some terrible illness, because they will have a terrible responsibility afterwards. Christos. Yeah. Okay. Mary and Martha went to southern France, at least. This is the legend I read when we were there, in the area of Pont-au-Gard. Oh, I've never heard that story, but I'm delighted to hear it, and I shall look that up. That makes sense. They, like all the others, were going to the ends of the world to proclaim the gospel. Some of them even came as far as here. So Simon Zelotes apparently preached at the end of the road over here. St. Paul also preached at the end of the road, just up the road here. Later, 300 years later, St. Constantine and St. Helen walked down the road. Probably not past this church. This would have been out in the countryside at the time. But they would have gone down what is now the A15. And certainly it's said that St. Simon Zelotes went up the A15 to a place called Caister, which makes plenty of sense. This was a Roman colony at the time, and Caister was a Roman fort. So it would have been a good place to go to. Okie pokey. Well, pray for me, pray for each other, please. Keep on praying for Andrew and Elizabeth. Also pray, please, for Esther and Bella. Okay, we need to pray for each of those. Lazarus' tomb, yes, is indeed in Larnaca. You put your ear to the tomb, you're meant to hear the Lord saying, Lazarus, come forth. Okay, and pray for all of them. Also for Anastasia and Dora, great name Dora, his gift. Okay, and pray for each other as well. God bless you.